Hello, welcome to the second part of this Game Maker to Godot tutorial. Today we're gonna cover some basic stuff like importing new sprites and one of the main differences between Game Maker and Godot, which is the node system and how you should start thinking about organizing your projects. So let's start with importing a few sprites that I have here. These are all the files that Godot generates. The ones with a dot in front are hidden files, so they are not gonna show up here. And if you want to add some sprites in a similar way as you would do it in Game Maker, I'm gonna go ahead and create a folder called sprites. And inside this folder, I'm gonna copy and paste the sprites that I already have ready. Okay, they are just a door frame and just the door. So I'm gonna add them now. If you see when I select Godot, you can already see the changes. The sprites are loaded and you can start using them. Now, if you do the same in Game Maker and you drag and drop some files, you will notice that it will ask you what kind of file do you want it to be. In Godot, there's not a distinction between sprite and background like separate categories, but there are different properties that you can set to the sprites that your project has. So if we go back to Godot and we select this sprite, here on the top right corner, you can see the import tab, which has all the properties for this specific element. So yeah, it's not the same, but at least you can see what kinds of changes you would do. For instance, if I add this door to the project as a regular sprite, to the scene, not to the project, if I zoom in, you can see that it's blurry. That's because filtering is on by default. So to disable it, I have to select the sprite that you want and in the flags category, untick the filters. So after that, I press re-import and you can see it's very, very crisp and sharp. You can save actually these presets so you don't have to do the same every time you import a sprite. And yeah. This is in Game Maker, it would be something like in the settings of the project. You see here that you have in graphics interpolate colors between pixels. It's the same options. So if you have it enabled, you will see everything blurry. And if you disable it, you will see everything with a pixel art kind of style. Getting back to this node, the door, has the boundaries of the sprite. You can move it around, and here on the properties you see the X and Y position. If I move it up, you see the Y goes down. If I move it down, the Y goes up. The same as you would do in Game Maker. But you have to think that they are relative to their parents. So in this case, this node 2D is the parent of these two elements. So this would be what 0 is for the rest of the nodes. If I move this node, you can see that everything moves relative to it. And you can set this position to be whatever you like. But I prefer to have a 0 just so it's similar to Game Maker. And one interesting thing to notice here is that if you see here and I want to place this at 100x and 100y, you can see that it's in the 100 position. But if I move the node, the parent, since everything is relative, and I move it to 100, you can see that this still is 100 and 100 because it's relative to the parent. It's not a global value. So this is very useful when you're using nodes and these kind of hierarchies. So let's say, gonna go back. Let's say I want to add the door that covers this part as a child of this. So I'm gonna drag it here. Gonna be a sprite. Gonna take this and re-import it. And I will move it, let's say here. Yeah, that looks good. So now this door, if I move it, the child will move as well. So I don't have to take care of, like updating the position in the step event or following each time you move it. Everything is taken care of because the positions of the elements are relative. Something that can happen when you're editing a level and you have a lot of things is that you can accidentally move something. So there's an option. You can select the parent and click in this button here, which will make sure that the children are not selectable. So if I move this, I know that it will always follow the parent. I won't be able to select it from this editor. To do something similar in GameMaker is very tricky because there's actually no way to do these kind of behaviors. If I wanted to do something, what I would do in my case, I know there's a lot of ways, but I would create an object with this sprite, place the object around there, for example, and then you could either create a new object and place it on top of it, use the draw event to do it, but all of them has their disadvantages. So in this case, you could maybe, use the Y and X position relative to that to kind of see if it's the same position. I mean, there's a lot of ways, but as you can see, it's very inconvenient and there's no way to preview it before going in, unless you create another object. But creating a lot of objects in GameMaker is very inefficient. So yeah, I really like this kind of setup in Godot because already I know that these two are a couple and they are one thing. They are just the door. Also, if you want to change the relative point, as you can see here, the origin, you can do that in a sprite node using the offset position. You can offset here by X, Y, flip it, or just the center is the relative point. Right now it's in the center. Like this is the default in GameMaker, which is the top corner. And yeah, that's basically all you need to know for now. So let's now animate this door. Let's make that this door goes something like down like this, and then yeah, it gets open. How you would do that? There are different ways to do it. In GameMaker, there is not really an animation editor unless you do it frame by frame. So you will have to create an animation for this door that basically like moves everything step by step. That's creating a lot of images. It's not a very efficient way. Another way would be to use the draw region. It's draw sprite part, which will draw a part, but you have to start doing the testing, the offsets, and it's super terrible from a UX perspective, especially because you cannot preview it in the room editor as you edit things. In Godot there's a node which is the animation player, so let's gonna add it here. Since it's going to be related to this door, I'm gonna create a sub node here, and here you have it, animation player. What this animation player does is it creates an animation that will edit any of the properties from the inspector in a timeline base. If you ever used any video editing software, you will find everything super intuitive, and if not, it's super simple to understand. So let's create a new animation, which is gonna be the door animation. And I have the time frame here. I can now, if you see, if I have this menu open, all the properties have now like a key on the side. That is for creating a keyframe. So I want to create a keyframe with the position here. And what the keyframe animation does, I don't want to go a lot in depth, is that you can select one different point of the timeline, modify this value to whatever you like it to be. So it's gonna be like fully open, somewhat here. Gonna use the key again. As you can see, I created these two dots. So now the animation moves that value that I selected in the span of 1 second, which is here what we have on this animation. Also, it's very nice that you can select the curve. If you've done any web programming or you've done any of the CSS properties like animate or anything like that, you will find this very useful. So you have here, for example, cubic, which will make it kind of like slide instead of just going straight. And yeah, you can also edit the curves and anything. There's a tutorial about it. I'm gonna leave a link on the description, but for now this is working well. And I can see it right here. I can preview it. It's just wonderful. Now, I don't want to show the part of the door that I'm not seeing. So how would I crop this? So to do that, I would do the region button here. Gonna create a new track. Each track tracks one of the properties. And at the end, how it will look like. Gonna click on enable. Now I'm gonna set direct to be 0, 0, and the size of this sprite is 92 per 80. So this would be 92 and 80. So this would be the first frame. And now in the last frame, the height would be 0. Let's see how this looks. Yeah, it's not exactly the same because I don't know. Yeah, it's moving. I'm gonna adjust the Y position. Right there, like 40. Yeah, like 40 and something. Let's gonna keep it at 40. Let's gonna set the keyframe again. And let's see if this works. Well, it kind of works. It's not the best, as you can see. Sorry, my bad. I just forgot that I had the cubic set there. So now if I set them both to cubic, should be fine. Yeah. So yeah, basically this, as you can see here, I did this very quickly, everything in a visual way. And even though I had that cubic thing going on there, like you already have this animation, which I don't know for you, but for me in GameMaker it would take so long that it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So now I have this door here, and I'm very proud of it. I can now select this animation tab, it will close, so the key will disappear, and now I have one door place everywhere I want. So now how would you instance this node the same way as you would do in GameMaker? Well, that's another great thing about Godot, is that every structure of nodes can be saved as a scene, which, if you remember, were the rooms, and any scene can be instanced within another scene. So basically you're creating structures of nodes that you can repeat in every other place that you like. So let's gonna do that. Let's gonna save this door. Let's say save branch as a scene, and let's create a folder which will be called scenes, which is a way of merging both objects and rooms. And let's gonna call it door.tsn. If you click here, it will open the editor for that specific node. If you notice, the door is on the position that we set before. So what I prefer to do with every new scene is just set it to 0. So I know the center of the node is gonna be always that. And I save it. Now getting back to this, I can move the door anywhere I want to. And this door, you cannot see the childs anymore, and you can see this icon. That means that it's this scene. So whenever I modify this scene, let's say I'm gonna modify the modulate color, that's gonna make it somewhat like red. If I save it and I go back to this scene, you see it's modified to red. That's huge when it comes to encapsulating logic of your code and repeat it over and over again in different places with slight modifications. That's something that you cannot do exactly with the parent and child structure of GameMaker, and is extremely powerful once you start using it. So I really recommend you to play with this concept, and yeah, just go nuts about it. Like, it's anything you want to do with it, it's super fun. Let's now just create a bunch of doors. You can duplicate them by pressing Ctrl D in Windows. So now let's have like a few doors around. Gonna remove this icon, we don't need it anymore. And okay, have all these doors here. Now, one cool thing that I like about this kind of inheritance that you have going on is that I can modify this to, let's say, I want this door to be green, and I want this door to be blue, and I want this one to be yellow. Well, yeah, it's not the most yellow door I've seen because of the green, but okay. So if you notice, there's a like go back button, which will reset it to whatever you have set in the main one. If you want to go back to the default value, you press here and you will go back to it. This is great because not only you can instance different scenes, but you can also modify them and without the fear of interfering with the rest of them. So now let's say we're working with a designer and he wants to show one of these stores as open. How you would go about modifying one of the childs? You can modify these nodes by right-clicking and selecting this option, which is Editable Children. Now you see as a grayed out version of the branch. So now I can press here on the eye and you see this door will be displayed as open. So yeah, this is very, very powerful. I recommend you to play with it a lot before starting to make any games. And it's something very, very useful to have. And it really changes your way of thinking about how to organize your projects and your rooms. You can combine all the nodes to create powerful elements to your game without coding all those relationships between them, which is very useful. And also keeping your code clean, which is something that if you had ever a big project in GameMaker, you'd notice that the projects don't end up being clean, even if you really try to. There's a lot of things going on. Everything is usually global. There's a lot of hidden stuff that you don't really see how it happens. And here you can control a lot of those variables. Because remember, if I modify something in one of the children, it's going to be relative to the parent. So that means that if the doors are slightly to this side, it's going to be the same for all of the instances. Well, that was one of the biggest things for me to understand when I moved from one engine to the other. I hope I did a good job explaining how this node system works. I'm gonna just add one last thing for you on this video before closing, which is the grid system. When you're editing, if you notice here, a lot of numbers that I move with my mouse make a float number. And if you're working with pixel art, you don't really want to have all these numbers going around. So there's a magnet here, which will enable snap. Snap is the same as the grid in GameMaker. And as you can see now, everything is being moved snapping. You can configure this snap here. Like I said, the default in GameMaker is 32 by 32, or at least that was when I was using it. And if you want to view the grid, you can press G or toggle it here. Helpers is something very nice. So you see like the distance that you moved things. You can also, well, yeah, you get the point. But basically this is where I'm gonna end it for today. Thank you for the likes, the comments, and the subscribe in the previous video. I really appreciate all your comments. On the next video, I'm gonna keep covering more of these differences. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. I will do my best to answer or to include your answer in the next video. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much and see you for the part number 3.